When the Republicans vote for this bill today, they will be voting to say that women can die on the floor and healthcare providers do not have to intervene. I can't even describe to you the logic of what it is that they are doing.
House Republicans voted tonight 251 to 172 to pass H.R. 358, the Protect Life Act. Nicknamed the Let Women Die bill by pro-choice Democrats, the legislation seeks to prohibit women from using tax subsidies from the Affordable Care Act to purchase insurance that covers abortion, except in cases of rape, incest, or health risk to the mother. It would make it illegal for federal funds to go to any health care plan that provides abortion services, even if the woman pays out of her own pocket.
My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are attempting to do is misogynist. It is absolutely misogynist. The time has come for us to stop taking up this issue over and over again this year and do something that the American people really care about. They want jobs. They want to be able to hold on to their homes. They want some mortgage relief. And what do? We stand here on the floor and create yet another opportunity for women to be cast in shackles.
Instead of continuing to focus on creating jobs and getting the American people back to work, tomorrow the House of Representatives is scheduled to turn its attention to a divisive, politically motivated piece of legislation that unnecessarily restricts the private insurance choices that women and their families have today.
Joining me now, Michelle Goldberg, author of The Means of Reproduction, Sex, Power, and the Future of the World. Thanks for joining me tonight, Michelle.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, as I understand it, this is the Republicans claim they need to do this. Federal funding for abortion is already banned through the Hyde Amendment. Right. So I never understand why it keeps coming up, because it's banned, but they're saying there's something that the Democrats did in the president's health care bill that requires us to go in and plug some hole.
Right. Well, there are two different things going on here. I mean, part of it is just legislation as propaganda. Republicans have been claiming as part of their kind of full court press against health care reform that it subsidizes abortion. It does not. But if they can kind of pass a law ostensibly to stop healthcare reform from subsidizing abortion, it only kind of reinforces their case and helps convince their base that by fighting healthcare reform, they're also fighting on behalf of the pro-life cause. And then they've gone above and beyond. One thing that Republicans often like to do is pass laws in response to non-existent problems and then use them to kind of twist the knife a little bit more. You see that in response to so-called voter fraud, which is all, and then it kind of goes all the way into voter disenfranchisement. I think this is somewhat analogous. The most sadistic part of this law is the kind of so-called conscience clause, which would go further than current law.
What is current law on the conscience clause?
So there's something called the Access to Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, which requires hospitals to, it basically says that hospitals can't turn people away in emergency life and death situations, and that if they can't treat them, they have to transfer them to another hospital that can, and that hospital can't turn them away. So the way that that's been interpreted right now with Catholic hospitals, and this is mostly about Catholic hospitals, which are 15% of all hospitals. The way that that's been interpreted so far is that Catholic hospitals have routinely refused to treat women in really life-threatening circumstances and transferred them to other hospitals. There's been some question about whether what they're doing is kind of valid. The ACLU has said in many cases they've endangered women by transferring them, say, to a hospital 90 miles away when they're in sepsis or when they're hemorrhaging or when they can barely be stabilized. But at the very least, right now, you have to transfer them. This law would not only say that they absolutely don't have to treat them, which right now is somewhat up in the air, but it would say that you don't even have to transfer them.
So you don't have to start up the ambulance, just...
Right, and it's easy to imagine a case when somebody who is so opposed to abortion that they would reject transferring them because that would itself result in an abortion. And again, these are in very dire cases when usually the pregnancy isn't viable and the woman's life is at stake that very day.
Now, if that was a real factor that somehow needed to be dealt with. Why did the Republicans wait until this day in 2011 when they could have tried to legislate that at many times in the past?
You know, I think that the Republicans have convinced themselves that women are so kind of desperate to kind of get their delectable abortions by any subterfuge possible that, you know, it's partly why they tried to redefine rape earlier this year. They kind of said that we're only going to pay for abortion in cases of forcible rape, the idea being that women were just sneakily claiming rape to get their abortions. There's something similar here. It's as if women are just kind of sneakily claiming that their life is at stake. So it's not a real problem. The only way, it is a real problem in that there's a debate about whether or not Catholic hospitals are treating women adequately. And so in that sense, they're kind of catering, they're covering them. But this is also just a way to kind of further an incredibly twisted view of women and women's health, kind of by any means possible.
Yeah. Michelle Goldberg, columnist for the Daily Beast, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.